So good morning, everybody. My name is Tim Ailer, meteorologist. Hope you're doing well today. And we have the Arctic boundary pushing through the east. Well, disturbance moving through anyway, and it's going to push an Arctic boundary through the east coast over the weekend, tonight and tomorrow, with potentially heavy snow, squalls, and definitely high winds here. So ongoing, we have just snow um, in the Midwest here, and some rain showers out west, right? And temperatures generally coldest here in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, single digits, right? Temperatures are relatively mild for especially for the northern tier of the U.S. This morning, above freezing. It's colder down here in central Georgia than it is in North Dakota right now. So that's definitely a dichotomy there. I said that word 3 times today. Kind of got a new word of the day. So we also have an excessive rainfall outlook for day 2 here, right along the west coast, and we also have a thunderstorm risk here for day 3, which is Sunday here, right in parts of Arizona and New Mexico. But overall, no severe threat. Excessive rainfall threat isn't that high either, although that may change in the long term. Right. So in today's forecast, we're going to talk about the short term, the long term, a pretty active pattern setting up with a return of moisture to the west coast. And I appreciate y'all watching. Like and subscribe to my channel. I appreciate that. And donate if you feel compelled. I appreciate you watching, like I said, and we'll get started with the current hazards. So here are the current hazards. Got to move this over a little bit, guys. Here we go. Um, all related to cold weather for the most part. If we zoom this out, with the exception of the west coast, we have cold weather warning, extreme cold weather warnings, winter weather advisories related to snowfall here, right? Winter weather advisory, cold weather advisory, Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky. Special weather statement for other areas for periods of snow here, although not highly impactful. Winter storm warning, extreme cold warning for the Appalachians, high wind warning for the Appalachians and into parts of Maryland, right? Lake wind advisory in South Carolina. Some extreme cold watch and special weather statement along the southeast coast here for some maybe frozen roadways and things like that. So quite a lot of different advisories here. And in southern Florida and parts of northern Florida, you have a freeze warning ongoing right now, as well as a cold weather advisory for cold temps. Right, we know temps have been way below normal for Florida. And let's see, Nebraska, we got a flood watch for ice jams, right? And wind advisory up here in North Dakota, Minnesota, and out west here, we have some air stagnation problems with dense fog. Idaho, Oregon, Washington State, freezing fog in the valleys here, and that's about it for current hazards. So one of the big things going on for Georgia is the possible high winds up here in northeast Georgia, gusts to 30 from 35 to 55 miles per hour. And here's the timing of these gusts, right? Around 6 a.m. Saturday morning is the most likely time to have this isolated tree or power line damage as possible up here in northeast Georgia, adding insult to injury from the recent ice storm and all those things. So even in central and Georgia and parts of the Atlanta metro, 20 to 30 mile per hour wind gusts are likely here as another Arctic boundary or cold front moves through. For today, temperatures in the low to mid 50s to low 60s with sunny skies. Tonight, pretty chilly. The lower 20s up in northeast Georgia and near 30 in far southern Georgia. And tomorrow, still pretty nice in the 50s to near 60 in southern Georgia with clear skies. As far as the 15-day temperature outlook, looking to trend above normal here through the middle part of February, maybe cooling off a little bit to near normal to slightly below right during that period, then warming up again. When I mean cool, with 50s and 60s for highs and 40s and 30s for lows. So not overly cold, but cooling off some, and then warming up again after that. So gonna be a nice change from what's been going on so far the past month or so. So here are the key messages for the extreme cold moving into the eastern U.S. over the weekend. Potentially snow squalls with wind potentially gusting over 50 miles per hour moving through the area. Um, Most likely across the southern central Appalachians, mid-Atlantic, and interior Northeast. So wherever these snow squalls come through and heavy winds, you need to be mindful of that. High winds, excuse me. So hypothermia is going to be a real problem this weekend. So if you do have to go out, multiple layers, cover up all exposed skin surfaces. And if you do have to drive, make sure you have a winter safety kit in your car. So you can read the rest of this if you want. But this is generally through the 6th to the 9th, which is starting today through Monday. As far as day 3 to 7 hazards, we have the risk of hazardous cold continuing along the eastern seaboard, the 8th to the 9th of this month. And these hazards are valid from the 8th to the 12th, right? So heavy precip, maybe along the western, northwestern coast here, Oregon, Washington, up in the Canadian border. Heavy precip, high winds, and are likely here the 8th, 9th, and 10th, depending where you're at, in Alaska here as well. So out west here, we have nothing really going on to start the period. The simulated radar, maybe some showers in the California mountains, Sierra Nevada range, and some showers moving into Texas as we get into Saturday around 10 a.m. The moisture really picks up along the Washington coastline here, Washington State. And we talked about this, the increased moisture and rainfall potential here is really on the increase. And this is the pattern change we've been talking about. So, um, so yeah, let's go on the temperature. Temperatures generally starting out this in the 40s, 30s, and 60s in desert Southwest. Of course, warming up for a good portion of the Intermountain West, exception of the higher terrain here, all the way up into the Washington State as well. Then as we get through time here, it's still pretty warm into the south here, but as moisture streams to the into the northwest portion of the area, the temps are going to be cooler, and that's it for the temperatures. Let's look at apparent temperature, right? I don't think there's really much to look at here as far as wind chills go, with the exception of, maybe Intermountain West with some potential winds here. And let's look at wind gusts real quickly. Um, right, may have some wind gap events going on here, and the winds will pick up along the northwest coast, of course, as system moves on shore, which it normally does, and maybe in the higher terrain here on the Canadian border, and points to the east here in the central to northern plains as that Arctic boundary moves through. Um, so that's it for the west coast. So for the central U.S., not a lot going on to start with the exception of up here around the Great Lakes. That Arctic boundary moving to the south here, and that kind of moves out. Maybe some lake effect snow on the backside, and you see some increasing moisture in the south here, the southern part, southwest part of the area. All right, lake effect snow bands kind of hanging out there, but not a lot of effect on sensible weather. Moisture is returning to the desert southwest and parts of Texas, and maybe another boundary moving through the um, northern parts of the upper Midwest here, right? And moisture, like I said, coming back into Texas here. So, as far as temperatures go, pretty cold, but a dichotomy, if you will, of temperatures, um, warmer, colder to the west here than it is to the east. And you see how warm it gets during the day here in Texas, 70s and 80s, and just to the north here in the single digits to teens, 60s all the way up into Montana, Wyoming, Colorado. That cold air pushes a little further south overnight, and into Saturday, warms up again, although not quite as warm, but still 70s, 60s, all the way up, bordering Canada here, right? And temperatures cool back down overnight. Now we look at apparent temperature, right? So you know where the coldest wind chills are, right up to the north here. Go through Saturday during the day. Coldest temps push to the south, but you see wind chill values are highest up to the north here where it's colder, and maybe you're having some heat index effects here, um, but it's probably pretty dry. Even the desert southwest warming up quite a bit here as well. course, cooling back off overnight. So for folks just to the east of the Rockies, it's going to be a warm couple days. So enjoy it while you can until the weather changes, which of course it will eventually. So as far as the short term, excuse me, what's going on here? So let's start it off with this. It's about 4 a.m. right now. Storm off the east coast here. Snowfall ongoing here. Although I don't know, HRR seems to be underdone with the ongoing snowfall here. But generally, it moves to the east over the lakes. Maybe some freezing rain and sleet in the southern parts. This area here. Okay. Moves to the south and shows the precip really picking up here in the Appalachians. Okay. Heavy snowfall this evening, this afternoon, 2 p.m. Eastern. Right. So yeah, that's it's getting to be accompanied by some intense winds as well, and we'll show that as well here in a second. And here the forecast wind gusts as we move through time here with this. Not seeing a lot until later on when this pushes through, right? And the highest winds are in the Appalachians um, and in the Great Lakes area as we get through extended, right? Not the extended, but we get till 6 p.m. today. So this is 15 hours. Let's go 6-0 and go a little further here. All right, so there we go. High winds. You see right on the lee side of the Appalachians are kind of blocking that, right? But then as the system moves through, you see the wind gusts propagating to the east here. And like I said, highest winds are in the Appalachians, the Piedmont, North Carolina, all up to the northern apps and the eastern seaboard as well. But you see the orange and the reds, that's the highest wind gusts. And they wane over time here. So let's go through this real quick. Here's a swath of wind gusts. This just shows it over time and doesn't go away here. So these are the highest wind gusts as the system moves through. Here's the temperatures starting off very cold up the north, teens, and even in near freezing farther to the south. So temperatures warm up in the southern part of the area, 70s and 80s here in Texas, right? And then you see where the cold air is moving through here, that cold front blasting to the south and east. This is Saturday morning to Saturday noon. This is actual air temperatures, single digits to negative single digits in New York State and in the Appalachians, right? That's incredibly cold. And overnight, of course, wow, these are actual air temperatures, single digits to negative single digits for a good portion of the Northeast. So, and we talked about this, but I wanted to show you this. Now we look at apparent temperature, right? Let's go through time with this. You see these wind chill values, negative 30, negative 40, even in the Great Lakes area and in the Appalachians. We go through time with this, 8, 9 a.m., 10 a.m. Wind chills in the negative teens still in the Northeast. New York State, negative 20s, negative 30s. Get into the evening hours, that wind is still howling up here. So, you know, it's going to be brutal. These wind chills are going to be incredibly high, meaning very cold. Don't go out on this, guys. Not going to be a good day, or you're not going to have a good time if you try to go out in this. You're going to want to come right back inside here. So when we move on to the 8 to 14-day hazard outlook from the Climate Prediction Center, we have slight risk of high winds along the west coast of the U.S. here, and slight risk of, not high winds, heavy precip, excuse me, on the west coast of the U.S. here, the 13th to the 19th, and 15th to the 19th in parts of California, excuse me, and the 13th to the 15th in the Mississippi Valley, Tennessee Valley, parts of the Appalachians. Risk of heavy snow returns to the western U.S. during this period as well, generally the 13th, the 15th through 19th, and you see how it moves further south, the 15th through the 19th, and then further north, the 13th through the 19th as well, and slight risk of heavy snow up in northern New England during the 13th to the 15th. Now, the risk of high winds is here as well, right? So we have a slight risk here, the 13th through the 17th along the west coast, and the 15th through the 19th further to the south, and then the 13th through the 19th in the along the front range of the Rockies or Mountain West here, all the way stretching down to the Mexico and Canadian border. No hazardous temperatures expected during this period, which is a nice change here. So the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, this was issued yesterday. You can see what's happening here. Um, Colder temps pushing into the west here with enhanced precipitation chances as well. We'll talk about that on the next slide here. Above normal temperatures in the central U.S. are looking likely, with near normal right along the eastern seaboard into southern Florida, and below normal in parts of Alaska, most of Alaska to near normal to above further to the south. Hawaii looking above and above and to near normal in Aleutian Island chain. Precip chances for most of the nation are on the increase during this period as well, with above normal precip chances, especially out west here in the Ohio Valley, Mississippi Valley here. Near normal just to the tip of Texas here, maybe below normal way south in southern Florida here, near normal as well. Above the near normal in Alaska, above in Hawaii, and above the near normal in Aleutian Island chain also. Moving on to the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook, look into the highest confidence for warmer than normal temps in the central U.S. out into the upper Midwest, generally east of the Rockies, right? Near normal to below normal out west, and maybe near normal in southern Florida, but otherwise you can see where the different probabilities are. And the most confidence of above normal temperatures is in the deep south. Alaska looking to be below normal through the period with temps, above normal in Hawaii, and below to near normal depending on where you're at in the Aleutian Island chain. Precip chances through the extended here look to be on the increase as well compared to what it's been. It's been mostly dry across a large portion of the nation. So you got that bullseye here in the Tennessee Valley and along the western coast here and points inland, maybe near normal to below normal, way far to the south here, southern tip of Texas and Florida. Normal to near normal, depending where you're at, and below in far southern Alaska. Near normal to above precip chances on Aleutian Island, and above Aleutian Island chain, excuse me, above in Hawaii as well. So what is the global models show here? So I'm going to start off with the European AI, Saturday, the 10th of February. We got our East Coast storm, clipper system moving through with cold air, maybe another clipper system moving through the flow here. We got our system off the west coast, maybe some returning moisture to the southern Texas, and you see the boundary setting up, at least according to this model. Maybe some overrunning precip along the boundary, maybe a low moving to the north here, and bring in some frozen precip to the northeast, although at this point it's kind of uncertain, the precip type chances, things like that, more details to come with that. You see the general freezing line here, right? And this model particularly likes multiple systems coming through here. And you get towards the 14th and 15th of February, wants to bring a system through the Intermountain West and really develop it pretty far south here. And you see you have an East Coast storm here, really far south. Although there's not a lot of cold air farther to the south, it looks like for me it's maybe thinking about a CAD wedge here. And out west, pretty very active. And we've talked about how active it's going to be. So now let's look at the overall upper level flow here associated with this. Trough off the eastern seaboard here, mid-level low in the desert southwest, gets absorbed in the mean flow, but you have this little disturbance moving through here, right? And generally a pretty general flow at the mid-levels, at least to start with. And maybe this other push, low developing, mid-level low, a push of cold air again, cool air anyway, into the northeast, and this Baja low possibly ejecting out, right? And the mean trough, it kind of dampens here and doesn't really do much, although it's almost acting like it wants to redevelop here and maybe take on a somewhat negative tilt. And we switch back to the surface here with this. Yeah, so that's pretty far out, guys, but that's the European AI model. So what does the Euro operational run show? I mean, we have a good handle on the short term, right? But we'll just show through the rest of the week, right? We move through time with this, 10th into the 11th. Wants to maybe develop a system here, but doesn't show a lot of development as compared to the AI models, which is interesting. Doesn't, it's just very not amplified at all, very zonal with this, right? And a zonal flow pretty much throughout the continental US, right? And then maybe towards the end, wants to do this trough a little bit along the eastern seaboard and along the west coast, we see a Baja low, maybe swing through the flow here, very far south, and really doesn't do much of anything. Um, Quite different from the Euro AI model and the GFS AI. So quite a dichotomy, really. That's my new word for the day. So um, I would say the AI models have better skill at forecasting stuff, but um, I don't have as much data, especially for the GFS AI, as far as its reliability, especially in the long term compared to other models. So the mid-level flow for the Euro AI, European, excuse me, is pretty much the same as other models as you start off this period. There may be a mid-level impulse moving through the flow here. Interesting little feature. Let's look at the surface with this real quick. See if it shows anything. Nothing really. But going back to the relative vorticity, and we look at vorticity and helped us to determine where its features might develop, right? This low, it really wants to dig this further south here. And it de-amplifies over time here, moves to the north, and it really doesn't do anything. It just kind of fizzles out. A lot different solution from the other models, okay? And then it digs this trough off the east coast, but it's positively tilted here. So if we go back to the surface, go back a little bit here with this. Sorry for the delay here. See how it just really doesn't develop until it gets offshore here, maybe further to the south, but very progressive. So you got potentially from snowfall right on the north end, but this is really far out, guys. So upper levels, relative vorticity, go back here. Yeah, it moves it offshore before it does much with it. And then it wants to develop a ridge. In general, overall, west to east flow here, with the exception of the west coast of the U.S. when we get towards the end of this model run. So let's say AI GFS show, but generally starting the same time as the Euro AI did, right? Um, Moisture streaming along the west coast here. Wants to develop this system along the eastern seaboard, and it's a little farther north. So, but frozen precip here and snow, maybe potentially heavy snow, next week into this area. Trough digging in, and some colder temperatures returning here to the northeast temporarily. Intermount west things kind of quiet, but then you have another system maybe developing here in the central plains and southern plains here, and really wants to get it going here in the middle part of the country. Plans to bring in heavy rain and severe weather in this area, right? And it's a little farther to the north with this feature compared to the Euro AI. Although I have to say there's pretty good agreement, at least generally speaking, with the other features here. Let's look at the upper levels real quick. So when we start this, we're starting around the 8th here with the AIGFS, upper level, mid-level flow, vorticity. This low dampens in the southern stream, really doesn't do much. You got this trough really digging along the east coast here. And it depends on how far south, and if this digs further to the west, then we potentially get and becomes negatively tilted. You see it become negatively tilted a little further to the east here. And you have ridging out west. Then you have this low kink in the flow moving through here, moving through the central part of the country, and then moving offshore. So that's your system at 240 hours that we've been talking about between the AI, GFS, and the Euro AI. And we got system off the west coast as well. So when we look at the GFS model, we compare it to other models. What does it show? Well, we know in the short term what's going on. Moisture streaming along the west coast and northerly flow. It wants to develop a pretty weak system off the eastern seaboard around Wednesday, which most models agree on, but the intensity is a little bit different with a little more deeper trough here, right? We switch to the upper levels and look at vorticity with this. A trough. Yeah, it wants to dig this trough right off the coast here. Let's take a look back to surface reflectivity. Yeah, so wants to really spin it up when it gets further offshore here. All right, we go further out. It really wants to wrap it around back to the west here, and it hangs out with a trough over the west or the east coast, which is a different solution from the Euro, right? And more of an amplified pattern here with deep trough over the west, ridge in the middle part of the country, but not very amplified um, pattern except for along the west coast and east coast. So let's look at the upper levels again real quick. Yeah, so you have a general like huge upper level low or mid-level low here out west, and some troughiness along the eastern seaboard with a ridge spiking just to the west here. So yeah, quite a bit of uncertainty further out, and I wouldn't. I think this is pretty normal, but that's what forecasters do. We look at the extended, look at trends and things like that. So we have time to figure this out. So what's the Canadian model show? I want to show Canadian, the Canadian as part of the whole analysis of this system moved through the northeast along the west coast. Moisture stream along the west coast, as we talked about. Maybe the ridge building here along the east, and the Canadian really doesn't want to develop this system along the eastern seaboard very much as well. Kind of just a general chance of snow up here into northern New England and rainfall in the northeast. So not nearly as cold as the other solutions, right? Maybe another Baja low swinging through here. And then wants to develop a pretty strong low pressure further to the south here in the central plains in the deep south. And swinging through the flow here. Potentially develop it offshore like some other solutions that we've seen. So we look at 500 millibar heights. This gives us a good idea of the surface and 500 millibar flow, right? And this is kind of even a better visual because it shows surface features and 500 millibar flow. So you have ridging here, troughiness, and troughiness here and here, right? So remains to be seen how this develops off the east coast. But I think what we're most certain of is the return of moisture to the west coast here. So, but overall, not a highly amplified pattern, pretty zonal here. So, quite different than what it's been in the past several days. So, I'm going to go through the ensemble members as well, the European and GFS. I prefer to look at it this way because you got your surface features and your 500 millibar flow. And you see, starting off the period, you have a ridge out west here, trough at the east, right? Trough moves off, and you see this 500 millibar flow really is amplified at this point, but it's de-amplifying over time. The ridge is flattening that was out west, and see how the flow is changing, right? You have general westy flow with a trough out west, and just not a lot of features here. And then it really wants to dig a trough off the west coast here, but you see what I'm talking about? But still not that deep of a trough, really. And when you get with the ensembles, as you get over time, this becomes less certain because you have 50 members that are competing for, and this is the average between the two, right? So you would expect, and what we see here is a flattening of the flow here, and partially, I think, because we're so far out. So I wouldn't rely on this too much this far out. But yeah, generally through the end of next week, you see some troughiness out west, right? And at least from the European ensemble, maybe a little bit northern stream flow, but not really bullish on a lot of things going on here. So yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on this, and I'm going to also talk about the GFS ensemble next. So starting off the period with the GFS ensemble here, East Coast trough, that mid-level feature in the flow here, but doesn't really do much with it. Maybe wants a trough off the west coast like we talked about. Kind of wants to keep the troughiness along the east coast as well, although the flow flattens out. You get towards next weekend and becomes a lot more uncertain. So let's look at temperatures at the surface real quick. Temperature anomalies. So what's it showing for anomalies here? at the surface. Of course, cold to start with in the east, warm out west. Go through time of this into Tuesday, still below normal as you go through time of this. Interestingly enough, it's one to keep the temperatures along the east coast below normal this whole time, and keeping the warmer temps in the central part of the country to northern Canada. So maybe not a lot of confidence in the, especially in the short to midterm, even parts of the long term, till maybe the end of this, or warmer temps in the east. So, and get for more less certain we get further out. So, yeah. Well, that's all I got for today, guys. I appreciate y'all watching. I hope you have a great day, and stay safe out there this weekend, especially in the Northeast where it's going to be brutally cold. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. God bless.